The summer sun hung heavy over Windsor Castle that afternoon. Inside the grand corridors, something was about to go terribly wrong. Prince George and Princess Charlotte walked side by side, their small shoes clicking against the polished marble. They had just finished their afternoon lessons. The portraits of their ancestors watched from the walls as the children passed beneath them. George was 9 years old, tall for his age, with his father's serious eyes. Charlotte, 7, walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. They were laughing about something their tutor had said. The sound echoed through the empty hallway. Neither of them noticed Queen Camilla, approaching from the opposite direction. She wore a cream-colored suit, pearls at her throat. Her expression was tight. She had been in meetings all morning, dealing with matters that would have exhausted anyone. The press had been particularly harsh that week. Every decision she made seemed to spark controversy. The children didn't see her until they were just meters apart, and that's when it happened. George, mid-laugh, accidentally bumped into a small decorative table. A crystal vase wobbled. Charlotte reached out to steady it, but her movement was too quick, too sudden. The vase tipped. Water splashed across the floor. The sound of crystal hitting marble rang out like a gunshot. If you're finding this story as gripping as we are, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Camilla stopped. Her jaw tightened. She stared at the broken pieces scattered across the floor, water pooling around the children's feet. What on earth do you think you're doing? Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. George froze. Charlotte's eyes went wide. We didn't mean to, George started. Didn't mean to? Camilla stepped closer. That vase belonged to Queen Victoria. Do you understand what that means? Do you have any idea of its value? Charlotte's bottom lip trembled. She looked down at her shoes, now wet with spilled water. You children run through these halls as if this is a playground, Camilla continued. Her voice rose slightly. You have no respect for history, for tradition, for the responsibility you carry? Ow. George's face turned red. He wasn't used to being spoken to this way. His parents were strict, yes, but never cruel. Never cold. We're sorry, he whispered. Sorry doesn't fix priceless antiques, Camilla snapped. Sorry doesn't undo carelessness. Charlotte's shoulders began to shake. She was trying not to cry, trying to be strong, but she was only 7. The weight of Camilla's anger pressed down on her like a physical thing. You will both go to your rooms, Camilla said, and you will think about what it means to be a member of this family. You will think about duty, about respect, about acting like the future of this monarchy. George reached for his sister's hand. Charlotte squeezed it tightly. They turned to leave, but Camilla wasn't finished. And don't think your parents won't hear about this, she added. Her voice followed them down the hallway. This kind of behavior is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. The children walked faster, almost running now. Behind them, Camilla stood among the broken crystal, her expression unreadable. What she didn't know was that someone had witnessed everything just around the corner. Hidden in an alcove stood 2 figures who had heard every word, ... Sophie. The Duchess of Edinburgh had seen everything. She stood in the shadows of the alcove, one hand pressed against her chest. Beside her was Officer James Matthews, a member of the Royal Guard who had been escorting her to a private meeting. They had turned the corner just in time to witness Camilla's outburst. Sophie's face had gone pale. Officer Matthews shifted uncomfortably. He was trained to be invisible, to see without being seen. But this was different. These were children. These were the future king and princess, being humiliated in their own home. Ma'am? He whispered to Sophie. Should we? Sophie held up one hand, silencing him. Her eyes never left the spot where George and Charlotte had disappeared. She could still hear their footsteps, quick and frightened. Fading into the distance, when Camilla finally walked away, her heels clicking with authority, Sophie let out the breath she'd been holding. Come with me, she said to Officer Matthews. It wasn't a request. They moved quickly through the corridors. Sophie knew these halls as well as anyone. She had been part of this family for over 2 decades. She understood the pressure, the impossible standards, the weight of crowns that hadn't even been placed yet. She also understood children, They found George and Charlotte in the East Wing, beside their private rooms. Charlotte was crying openly now, her small body shaking with sobs. George had his arm around her, but his own eyes were wet with tears he refused to let fall. George, Charlotte. Sophie's voice was soft, gentle. "May I speak with you?" George looked up. His expression was a mixture of shame and relief. Someone kind had found them. Someone who might understand. "We broke something," Charlotte managed between sobs. "Something really, really old." Sophie knelt down, bringing herself to their level. Her elegant dress pooled around her on the floor. She didn't care. "It was an accident," she said firmly. "Accidents happen." But Camilla said. George started. "I know what she said." Sophie's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "And I want you to listen to me very carefully. Both of you." Officer Matthews stood at a respectful distance, keeping watch. This was not a conversation for his ears, but he remained present, ready to assist if needed. Sophie took Charlotte's small hand in her own. She took George's hand with her other. "We are children," she said. "You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to laugh in hallways. You are allowed to be young. But we have responsibilities," George said, echoing the words he'd heard so many times. "We have to set an example." "You do," Sophie agreed. "But responsibility doesn't mean you can't be human. It doesn't mean you can't be happy. And it certainly doesn't mean you should be made to feel small when something accidental happens." Charlotte wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Is Camilla going to tell Mummy and Papa?" Sophie considered this. She knew Camilla would indeed tell William and Catherine. That's how these things worked. But she also knew something else. "Your parents love you more than anything in this world," she said. "They will understand. They were children once, too. Your father used to get into far worse trouble than a broken vase." George almost smiled at that. "Almost." Now Sophie stood up, smoothing her dress. "I want you both to wash your faces, take a few deep breaths, and then come with me. We're going to handle this properly." "Handle it how?" George asked. Sophie's expression became determined. "We're going to fix this. But first, I need to make a phone call."
Oh, yeah.
She turned to Officer Matthews. "James, I need you to escort these children to the blue drawing room in 15 minutes. Can you do that?" "Of course, Your Royal Highness." Sophie looked back at the children. "You are not in trouble. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me?" Charlotte nodded, still sniffling. George squared his shoulders, trying to look brave again, as Sophie walked away, her heels clicking with purpose. Officer Matthews crouched down to the children's level. "She's right, you know," he said quietly. "You're good kids. The best." George looked at him. "Were you there? Did you see what happened?" Officer Matthews nodded. "I saw everything. Are you going to tell someone?" Charlotte asked, fear creeping back into her voice. The officer smiled, a rare break in his professional demeanor. "I'm going to tell the truth. That's what I'm going to do. And the truth is, you two are braver than most adults I know." 15 minutes later, cleaned up and considerably calmer. George and Charlotte followed Officer Matthews through the castle. They had no idea what Sophie had planned. They had no idea who she had called. But something in her voice had given them hope. Something was about to change. The blue drawing room was one of the most beautiful spaces in Windsor Castle. Afternoon light streamed through tall windows, painting everything in gold. The walls were covered in silk damask. Paintings of former kings and queens watched from ornate frames. George and Charlotte stood near the door, uncertain. Officer Matthews remained with them, his presence somehow reassuring despite his formal stance. Sophie was already inside, speaking quietly on her phone. When she saw the children, she ended the call quickly. "Come in," she said warmly. "Sit down." There were 2 armchairs positioned near the fireplace. The children sat, their feet barely touching the floor. They looked so small in such a grand room. Sophie sat across from them. For a moment, she simply looked at them, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking," she began, "about what happened today, and I realized something important." Charlotte's eyes were still red from crying. George sat very straight, trying to look composed. You've both been taught about duty and responsibility since you could walk, Sophie continued. You've been told how to behave, how to dress, how to speak. You've learned that every action has consequences, that the world is watching, that you must be perfect. George nodded slowly. This was all true, but nobody, Sophie said, her voice becoming softer, has taught you the most important lesson of all.
That lesson?
Charlotte asked. That you matter more than vases? That your feelings matter more than antiques? That your childhood matters more than any tradition? The words hung in the air like something precious. Queen Camilla was wrong today, Sophie said it plainly, without hesitation. She was stressed, she was tired, and she took that out on you. That was wrong. George's eyes widened. Nobody ever said the Queen was wrong. Nobody ever took their side against authority. But Charlotte started. No buts, Sophie interrupted gently. Adults make mistakes too. Being in a position of power doesn't make someone right, and being a child doesn't make you wrong. There were footsteps in the hallway. Multiple footsteps. The door opened. Officer Matthews straightened even more, if that was possible. George and Charlotte turned to look. Prince William and Princess Catherine entered first. Their faces were serious, but not angry. Behind them came two more figures that made the children gasp. King Charles walked in, dressed in a simple suit. And beside him, looking far less confident than she had an hour ago, was Queen Camilla. Sophie stood. The children stood too, instinctively. Grandfather George said, his voice small. Charles smiled, but it was a sad smile. He looked at his grandchildren with eyes full of love and something else. Regret, perhaps? Or understanding, George? Charlotte. He crossed the room and knelt down, just as Sophie had. A king, on his knees before children. I heard what happened today. Charlotte looked at Camilla nervously. Camilla stood by the door, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Sophie called me, Charles continued. She told me everything, and Officer Matthews confirmed it. George glanced at the guard, who gave the tiniest nod. I want you to know something, Charles said. This family, this institution, these walls and traditions and responsibilities, none of it matters if you're not okay. None of it. Catherine moved closer to her children. William placed a hand on George's shoulder. We've made mistakes, Charles said. His voice was thick with emotion. I made mistakes raising your father. I let duty come before love too many times. I let protocol matter more than people, and I swore I wouldn't let that happen to you. Camilla took a step forward. Her face was different now. The hardness was gone. I was wrong, she said. Her voice cracked slightly. I was very, very wrong. I was angry about things that had nothing to do with you, and I spoke harshly. I spoke cruelly. And I'm sorry. Charlotte stared at her. You're sorry? I'm sorry, Camilla repeated. She came closer, though she didn't kneel. Your children. Beautiful, wonderful children. And you deserve kindness, especially from family. The vase, George started. Is just a vase, Charles said firmly. It's a thing. Things can be replaced. But you, he touched George's face gently, then Charlotte's. You are irreplaceable. Charlotte burst into tears again. But these were different tears. Relief, release. She threw her arms around her grandfather's neck. Charles held her tightly, his own eyes closing. George looked at his parents. Catherine's eyes were wet. William nodded at his son, giving him permission to feel whatever he was feeling. I was scared, George admitted quietly. I thought we did something terrible. We did nothing wrong, William said. Nothing. Sophie watched from the side of the room. Officer Matthews remained at his post, but there was something soft in his expression now. This was what the monarchy should be, Sophie thought. Not crowns and ceremonies. Not perfection and protocol. But this love, apology, humanity. Camilla approached Charlotte carefully. May I give you a hug? Charlotte hesitated, then nodded. Camilla embraced her carefully, as if the little girl might break. I'll do better, Camilla whispered. I promise. Charles stood, lifting Charlotte with him. She wrapped her legs around his waist like any child with any grandfather. Now, he said, his voice regaining its authority, but keeping its warmth. I believe we have some crystal to clean up. And perhaps he looked at Camilla meaningfully. We should move Queen Victoria's remaining vases somewhere less accessible. Everyone smiled. Even Charlotte giggled through her tears, but the day wasn't over yet. There was still one more thing that needed to happen. An hour later, the family gathered in a smaller, more intimate sitting room. This one had comfortable sofas instead of formal chairs. Books lined the walls. A fire crackled in the fireplace, even though it was summer. George and Charlotte sat between their parents. They looked tired but peaceful. The kind of peace that comes after a storm has passed. Charles poured tea. Camilla helped distribute biscuits. These simple domestic actions felt revolutionary in a palace. I want to tell you both a story, Charles said, settling into his chair, about when your father was your age. William groaned.
Oh no.
Not the bicycle incident. The bicycle incident, Charles confirmed with a grin. Charlotte perked up. What happened? Your father decided he wanted to learn to ride a bicycle in the throne room, Charles began. Not outside in the gardens, mind you. In the throne room. George's eyes widened. Inside? Inside, William confirmed, shaking his head at the memory. I thought the smooth floor would be better for learning. He crashed into a suit of armor, Charles continued. 16th century, priceless. It fell over with such a tremendous crash that security thought we were under attack. Catherine covered her smile with her hand. Camilla watched the children's faces light up. Are you in trouble? Charlotte asked. Enormous trouble, William said. Or so I thought. I was terrified. I hid in a closet for 2 hours. What happened? George leaned forward. Charles's expression grew serious. My mother, your great-grandmother, found him. And do you know what she did? The children shook their heads. She laughed. Charles said softly. She laughed until tears ran down her face. Then she took William's hand and said, Perhaps we should find you a better place to practice. Sophie, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. The late Queen understood something important. She understood that childhood is sacred, that memories matter more than antiques. Ash. But she was always so. George struggled for the word. Proper, she was, Charles agreed. In public, for the cameras, for the country, but with her family, she was grandmother first, queen second. Camilla set down her teacup. Her hands trembled slightly. I forgot that today. I put being queen ahead of being ... kind. We all forget sometimes, Catherine said gently. She had been quiet until now, just watching, listening. This life is hard. The pressure is constant. It's easy to let it change us. William put his arm around George. That's why we need to talk about these things. Why we need to be honest with each other. I have something to say. Officer Matthews spoke from his position by the door. Everyone turned to look at him. He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable being the center of attention. I've served the Royal Guard for 15 years. I've protected this family at public events, private moments, and everything in between. And I've seen, paused, choosing his words carefully. I've seen the toll it takes, especially on the young ones. Charles gestured for him to continue. The children Matthews looked at George and Charlotte. They watched every moment. Every expression photographed, every word analyzed. They can't make mistakes without the world knowing. They can't just be kids. That's true, William said quietly. But inside these walls, Matthews continued, they should feel safe. They should know that breaking something accidentally won't result in shame, that their family will protect them, not punish them. The room fell silent. The weight of his words settled over everyone. You're absolutely right, Charles said finally. And we need to do better. All of us. He looked at Camilla, then at William and Catherine, then at Sophie. We need to create space for childhood. Real childhood. Mistakes, laughter, broken vases and all. Charlotte had been playing with the edge of her dress. Now she looked up. Can I ask something? Anything, sweetheart, Catherine said. When I'm queen? Charlotte started, then stopped. If I'm queen someday, will I forget to be kind too? Will the crown make me forget? The question pierced through everyone in the room. So innocent, so profound, Camilla moved from her chair to kneel in front of Charlotte. This time there were tears in the Queen's eyes. "My dear girl," she said, "the fact that you're worried about that, the fact that you're already thinking about kindness, means you never will. The crown doesn't make us forget. We choose to forget. And you," she touched Charlotte's cheek gently, "you have already chosen differently." "You all have," Sophie added. "You're more aware at 7 and 9 than many people are at 70. You're going to change this institution. Make it better. More human." George straightened his shoulders. "We'll try. That's all anyone can ask," Charles said. "Just try. Make mistakes. Learn, grow. And always, always remember that you're loved first, royal second." William pulled both his children close. "Your grandfather is right. Nothing you could ever do, no vase you could ever break, no mistake you could ever make, would change how much we love you." "Nothing," Catherine emphasized. The fire crackled. Outside the windows, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. In that moment, they weren't the royal family. They were just a family, imperfect, learning, trying, but there was still something that needed to be addressed. Something important that Officer Matthews had quietly brought to Charles's attention earlier. As the children finished their biscuits, Charles caught Officer Matthews's eye. The guard nodded slightly. "It was time." "Charlotte," Charles said, "there's something else we need to discuss." The children looked up, suddenly nervous again. "It's nothing bad," William assured them quickly. "But it's important." Sophie stood and moved closer to the children. She had helped arrange this next part. She knew it was necessary. "Officer Matthews witnessed what happened today," Charles began. "He saw the entire incident from beginning to end, and he's written a report." George paled. "A report? It's standard procedure, Your Highness," Matthews explained. "Any incident involving members of the royal family must be documented." But Charlotte's eyes filled with tears again. "We already said sorry." Camilla said sorry. "Can't we just forget it?" Camilla shook her head gently. "That's not how it works, darling." And honestly, she glanced at Charles. "I don't think we should forget it." "What do you mean?" George asked. Charles pulled out a folder from beside his chair. "Officer Matthews's report is very thorough. He documented everything: the broken vase, the water, and most importantly, what was said. Every word." He opened the folder and began to read. The children appeared frightened and distressed. The Queen's tone was harsh and unforgiving. The children apologized repeatedly, but were not shown compassion. Camilla's face flushed with shame. "This report will be filed in the royal archives," Charles continued. "It will become part of the historical record. Centuries from now, historians will read it." "Why are you telling us this?" Charlotte whispered. Sophie knelt beside her. "Because the truth matters. Because what happened today was wrong, and we need to acknowledge that officially. Not just in this room, but in the permanent record." "I requested this," Camilla said. Her voice was steady now. "I asked that it be documented exactly as it happened. Not to punish myself, but to remember. And to show you both that accountability matters, even for queens." William looked at his children. "This is one of the hardest parts of this life. Everything is recorded. Everything is remembered. But that means the good and the bad, the mistakes and the repairs. We can't erase today," Catherine added, "but we can learn from it, and we can make sure it changes how we move forward." Officer Matthews spoke again. "There's one more thing in my report." "With Your Majesty's permission," Charles nodded. Matthews cleared his throat and read from memory, his voice formal. "I observed Prince George comfort his sister with remarkable maturity. I observed Princess Charlotte demonstrate courage in the face of authority. Despite their young ages, both children conducted themselves with dignity and grace. They are a credit to their family and their future roles." George's mouth fell open slightly. Charlotte looked at the officer with wonder. "That's in the official record too," Sophie said. "Not just what went wrong, but what you did right. How brave you were. How kind." "The full story," Charles emphasized. "That's what matters." Not hiding the difficult parts, but including all of it. The mistakes, the apologies, the growth. Camilla stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the gardens, her back to the room. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I grew up in a different time. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't apologize. We certainly didn't admit mistakes. I thought that was strength. She turned around. But I was wrong. Real strength is this admitting fault. Changing, growing. You're doing that now, Charlotte said softly. That's brave. The simple words from a 7-year-old seemed to crack something inside Camilla. She pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. Sophie went to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. These two women both married into this family, both navigating impossible expectations, understood each other in that moment. We're all learning, Sophie said. That's the secret no one tells you about royalty. We're all just people, trying our best, sometimes failing, hopefully growing.
Oh.
Charles stood and walked to his grandchildren. He held out both hands. They took them. I'm going to make you a promise, he said. From this day forward, these walls will be a place of safety for you. You can run in hallways. You can laugh loudly. You can make mistakes. And you will be loved through all of it. Your grandfather's right, William said. We're changing the rules. The old ways, the coldness, the distance, the perfection that ends with our generation. You deserve better, Catherine added. You deserve a childhood. George looked at his sister, then at his parents, then at his grandfather. What about our duties? Our responsibilities? They'll still be there, Charles assured him. But they won't come at the cost of your happiness. We'll find balance. We'll do better. Officer Matthews stepped forward. If I may speak freely, Your Majesty? Please, Charles said. These children are the future of this institution. But more than that, they're children. And they need what all children need. Love, safety, and the freedom to grow. He looked at George and Charlotte. You're going to be remarkable leaders someday. Not because you're perfect, but because you understand kindness. Because you've learned that strength includes vulnerability. The room fell quiet. Outside, the sun had nearly set. Long shadows stretched across the floor. Charlotte slipped off the sofa and walked to Camilla. The Queen looked down at her nervously. Can we start again? Charlotte asked. Can we be friends? Camilla's composure finally broke. She knelt and pulled Charlotte into a tight embrace. Yes, she whispered. Yes, we can. I'd like that very much. George joined them. Camilla opened one arm and included him in the hug. William and Catherine watched with tears in their eyes. Charles stood beside them, his hand over his heart. Sophie smiled, knowing that this moment, this healing, was what the family truly needed. But the story wasn't quite over. There was still one final piece. 3 days later, something unusual happened at Windsor Castle. A small ceremony was arranged in the white drawing room. No press. No photographers. Just family and a few trusted staff members. George and Charlotte stood at the front, dressed in simple, comfortable clothes. No formal outfits. No stiff collars or fancy dresses. Just children being children. Charles stood before them, but he wasn't wearing his regalia. Just a suit. Beside him were William, Catherine, Camilla, and Sophie. Officer Matthews stood nearby in his uniform. We've gathered here today, Charles began, to do something I should have done long ago. To create a new tradition. He held up a document, freshly written, sealed with the royal seal. This is the Charter of Childhood, he announced. A formal declaration that will be added to the royal household rules. It states, in official terms, that the children of this family have the right to be children. Talet's eyes widened. George stood very still, listening. Charles read from the document. Article 1. Royal children shall be permitted to play freely in designated areas of royal residences without fear of reprimand for normal childhood activities. He looked at the children and smiled. That means running in hallways, laughing loudly, and yes, occasionally bumping into furniture. Small laugh rippled through the room. Article. 2. Mistakes made by royal children in the course of normal childhood. Behavior shall be treated as learning opportunities, not failures. Accidents with property shall be addressed with kindness and understanding. Camilla stepped forward. I asked for that one specifically, she said to George and Charlotte. So I never forget. So none of us forget. Article 3, Charles continued. Royal children have the right to express emotions, to cry when hurt, to show fear, to ask for help. Emotional honesty is not weakness, but strength. Catherine wiped her eyes. William put his arm around her. Article 4. Any adult who witnesses a royal child being treated harshly or unfairly has the duty to intervene and report such treatment. Regardless of who is involved, Officer Matthews nodded. This was the article he had helped write. This was his contribution to protecting these children. And finally, Article 5, Charles's voice grew thick with emotion. Royal children shall be loved unconditionally, valued as people before titles, and protected in their right to grow, learn, and make mistakes in a safe and nurturing environment. He lowered the document. This charter will be posted in every royal residence. It will be given to every member of staff. It will be taught to every new employee. And it will be kept as a reminder that we are family first, monarchy second. George raised his hand as if he were in school. Yes, George. Charles smiled. Does this mean other royal children will be protected too? Not just us? Charles's expression filled with pride. Yes, this applies to all royal children now and in the future. You're not just protecting yourselves. You're protecting generations to come. Charlotte looked thoughtful. So we're making things better? For other kids? You are, Sophie said. By being brave enough to show vulnerability, by accepting apologies, by forgiving, you've changed something fundamental in this institution. Camilla stepped forward, holding 2 small boxes. We have something for you. Not a crown or a medal or anything official like that. Just ... a reminder. She opened the first box for George. Inside was a smooth stone, blue and gray, with a single word engraved on it. Brave. She opened the second box for Charlotte. Another stone, this one pink and white, with the word kind. These are from the beach at Balmoral, Camilla explained. I walked there yesterday, thinking about what to say to you, and I found these stones. They've been smoothed by waves, by time, by circumstances. They've weathered storms and come out beautiful. She placed the stones in their small hands. Q, she said softly. You weathered a storm, and you're beautiful because of it, not despite it. Charlotte threw her arms around Camilla. George followed, hugging her tightly. Thank you, they said together. The ceremony ended with tea and cakes, with laughter and easy conversation. Officer Matthews was invited to sit with the family, not stand guard. He looked uncomfortable at first, but eventually relaxed. As the afternoon wore on, George and Charlotte played a board game on the floor. Their parents watched from the sofa. Charles and Camilla sat nearby, hands joined. Sophie watched it all with quiet satisfaction. This was how it should be. This was how it would be. Later, as the sun set, William found Officer Matthews in the hallway. James, he said. The use of his first name was significant. Thank you. For seeing them, for protecting them. Not just physically, but in every way, Matthews nodded. It's an honor, sir. They're special children. They're going to change everything. I think they already have, William replied, in their rooms that night. George and Charlotte placed their stones on their bedside tables. They would look at them every morning. They would remember that they were brave, that they were kind, that they were loved. And down the hall in her own chambers, Camilla sat at her desk. She was writing letters to George and Charlotte to be opened on their 18th birthdays. Letters of apology, of explanation, of hope. I hope you remember this day, she wrote. Not as the day I hurt you, but as the day we all learned to be better. The day we chose love over protocol. The day we became truly family. She sealed the letters and placed them in her private safe. Someday the children would read them and understand even more deeply what had happened. How one difficult afternoon had changed the course of the monarchy. Officer Matthews filed his report that evening. The complete, unedited truth. It went into the archives, where it would be preserved forever. A testament to vulnerability, accountability, and growth, and in the castle, as everyone slept. The new charter of childhood hung in its place of honor. The first of many copies that would be distributed throughout every royal residence. The old ways were ending. The new ways, kinder, more human, more honest, were beginning. All because two children accidentally broke a vase. All because two people chose to bear witness instead of looking away. All because a family chose to heal instead of hide. The monarchy would never be perfect, but it would be better. It would be more human. It would protect its children, and that, perhaps, was the greatest legacy of all. The next morning, Charlotte ran down the hallway, laughing. George chased after her. They were being children, exactly as they should be, and nobody stopped them. Nobody scolded them. Nobody made them feel small. They were free. They were loved. They were safe, and that made all the difference.